It's August 12th, 2010, and we've got Matt Gallagher here with his, I have to read the titles, KABOOM, Embracing the Suck in a Savage Little War. Hello, Matt Gallagher.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Welcome to WinCam.
Thank you.
I brought the station manager with me because he likes your book.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Joe, LaRocca.
I never have to introduce him because we
No,
co-host
people know.
other shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
It works out.
But thank you for writing this. And how long did it take you to write it?
Well, it took me about 4 months. I wrote it, the first draft, pretty much in a 4-month burst, right when we got back from Iraq in February 2009. I was transitioning out of the Army, so it was an odd time in my life where all I really had to do was show up for formation at 6:30 every morning, slightly sober, and then I had the rest of the day to myself to kind of out-process and had a lot of free time, and wrote the book.
Computer?
On a laptop, yep. Stereotypical writer, passed out, in my underwear. Most of my upper leg hairs were probably singed from the laptop. So that is a serious danger for 21st century writers.
But
Yeah.
better to be singed by a computer than on the battlefield.
Oh, absolutely.
So how much, I know you were writing a blog at the time, right? Mm-hmm. So how much from was there like just copying and pasting sections from the blog, or was it, or did that
not
just
too much.
provide an outline or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. I think because the blog was up for about first 6 months of our 15-month deployment.
Right.
And for those kind of that first section that chronicled that timeline, it was more of an outline. There anything from going back and like rewriting it because blog posts, there's no editing process.
Yeah.
I wrote it and I posted it. Going back and taking out stuff that I didn't think needed to be included, including whole new sections that at the time I knew I couldn't put up on the blog because for operational security reasons. A prominent example being when we did a raid with a special operations unit, and we raided a mosque, which was a big no-no at the time. And so I knew then there's no way I could have included that on the blog, but I was able to put it in the book.
But so, and then it was taken down, or what did I?
Yeah, about 6 months in, I got called into my battalion commander's office, ranked lieutenant colonel, and he told me that he wanted me to be an executive officer for a different unit, which is a promotion, not in terms of rank, but job description. Mm-hmm. The downside of it is it would take me off the line and away from my soldiers. You're kind of in charge of all the logistical stuff back at the big base. Selfishly, I wanted to stay with my guys. 6 months in combat is a lifetime in terms of how close you can get with people. So I approached it from the stance, hey, sir, you need to know I'm getting out of the Army after this tour. Don't you think this could go to somebody who is going to make the Army a career?
Right.
He didn't really see it that way. Put me at attention, and a conversation that can really only happen in the military, of me taking all kinds of verbal abuse, staring at a wall and saying yes, sir, and saluting and moving out. It kind of stoked my Irish temper a little bit.
Yeah.
So I did what I'd been doing the previous 6 months, and I blogged about it, and then I posted it. And very naively didn't think it would get back to him, but that's how the internet works after all.
Sure.
Yeah, it was, he shut me down. And sometimes people want to portray it as kind of a big brother thing, but it was really just middle management shutting me down for mouthing off a little too much.
Boy, censorship, freedom of speech.
It raised some constitutional issues, absolutely, but even over there, I think my stance was, we're fighting for the Constitution, in theory. Once you sign on that dotted line, though, you do give up certain rights. So I understood. I probably would have handled that way as a leader. I probably would have handled it a little differently, knowing that you can't kill the internet, that things like Google Cache exists, and it's already out there. You might as well respond or make me apologize, handle it maybe a little differently. Yeah. But he was well within his right to shut me down, absolutely.
And how long into your time there were you decided that you were going to transition out of the Army? Was it like day one or?
No, I think even before we went over to Iraq and we were in the training phases, I never really thought I was a career officer. Mm-hmm. I was proud of my service and I valued it, and that didn't change in Iraq even on the really bad days. And there were were plenty. But it was just kind of, I had other things in my life I wanted to do. So 20 years is a long time to devote to one thing, and it just wasn't for me.
Embracing the suck, how do you describe that for our audience?
Right. Embracing the suck is a kind of common catchphrase used amongst military personnel, particularly Marines and Army. The suck can be anything. It can be a physical location like Iraq, a specific mission, life in general, what have you. And it kind of speaks to this kind of like raw pragmatism that is pervasive in military culture, which is, the suck is going to happen no matter what. You might as well embrace it and make it yours rather than have it embrace you and get overwhelmed by it. It was something that I came from, both my parents are lawyers. I kind of grew up in a very privileged background, white-collar background, grew up in the suburbs, as far from kind of military life that you can really get to. So I found it very refreshing, given my background, and just totally different, that kind of mentality and approach.
Oh, but all the lawyer parents, they're kind of doing battle all the time, right?
In a different way, yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So is there an embracing the suck there in that world?
Well, my mom has started using that phrase at the office, and she's a very sweet, southern, genteel woman. So I think it catches some of the younger male lawyers off guard when she's 110 pounds dripping wet. She's like, it's just time for us to embrace the suck. I think it catches them off guard. But she
you dedicated the book to her, correct?
I did. She had a tremendous impact on my life.
For sure.
She's promoting her son's book.
Yeah, in a way.
She's actually very, very good at that. She can get away with shameless mother stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Does she have a Facebook, and does she post links?
She's not very technologically savvy.
That's good.
Her and computers don't get along.
Now, was this a photo from?
It is.
Your
Yes,
time,
that's from
so
Iraq.
that's not staged.
No.
Wow.
It's me in the back of the Stryker. Oftentimes, you're on different people, different bosses are screaming at you. The job as a lieutenant, as a platoon leader over there is, you're the one officer with 20 enlisted guys, and your job is to kind of plan the missions and kind of oversee the execution of them. So for the senior officers, you are their go-to guy. I mean, one of the primary responsibilities is to communicate what is happening, and all too often they were calling at the same time. So it was trying to figure priorities. You got to figure out which one's the higher ranking and talk to him first.
It seems that was a big sense I got from reading the book. It's like, it must be so frustrating. You know how to do everything, but it seems like you never know why you're doing it, or you know a little bit about it, and that must be really irritating, especially for your troops.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very grating, and you're caught in between a rock and a hard place because what you're seeing on the ground and living with your guys, it's true because you're seeing it yourself. And then what's coming down the pipeline, oftentimes, is what they want to see or what they want you to report up, and you don't want to lie, obviously, so you got to somehow massage it to the point where you're communicating what actually happened to the superiors, and without inflaming their tempers and their egos.
Yeah.
And it rarely often was a smooth process.
Right. I mean, do you think that that's unique to this war? Is that something that I bet to some degree has been happening?
I think so. Some lessons are universal, and I'll pick up a Vietnam book or even a World War II book, and some of the things are just they're eternal within military culture. A lot of times, senior officers view wars as an opportunity to make their name.
Yeah.
And from my vantage point as a young platoon leader who really didn't have career ambitions, it was scary how some of them, not all of them, some of them were really great men, but some of them viewed us as chess pieces.
Yeah.
And that's quite bothersome.
Pretty insane,
when you're living it.
Yeah.
Realizing that one wrong move,
and then it's
you're
also
done.
not a game.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's not a game.
Right.
Am I the king or am I the pawn?
Yeah. Exactly.
Never thought I was the king. Sometimes, yeah.
So you said what? So describe what a Stryker is. It's a Humvee, or?
Stryker. It's kind of this combination between a Humvee and a tank.
Okay.
It's an armored vehicle. Unlike a tank, it has wheels, and it was designed specifically for urban warfare. So being in Northwest Baghdad, it was perfect because it can go up to 80 miles an hour, even though it weighs upwards of like 10, 11 tons. It has a ramp in the back, so you can load up to 10 to 12, a full squad of soldiers in the back. The downside of it, though, as we're seeing in Afghanistan, they're not doing really well in Afghanistan because mainly the mountainous passes over there make the Stryker really susceptible to roadside bombs. Now, we had armored skirts that we put around the Stryker, which made it just even wider, and they're also pretty tall vehicles. So a problem that we had driving around the local villages is you didn't want our radio antennas to snap their electrical wiring. So kind of reflective of the new friendly counterinsurgency that we were trying to incorporate over there in 2008. The gunners would have, they'd have their machine gun here, but they also had pretty much like a magic wand to lift the electrical wires over them. Because we didn't want to be the faceless,
just cutting off power every time you go down the street.
Exactly.
Right? Jeez.
Wow. We talked about Andrew Exum having a book, This Man's Army, out. With these two wars in particular, these battles, I don't see them as wars. They're kind of like battles because we don't have like a defined, us versus
them. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important that people get to read these books, like Andrew's and yours, so they get a bit of a handle? Because I think people are numb. They're really numb from Bush's war or this or that or the other thing.
Yeah, these protracted guerrilla wars are very different than I think what the typical American narrative of what war is, of kind of World War II, of good guys versus bad guys, force on force. The struggle that we had over there and in any guerrilla war is the enemy is part of the population, and your job, as amorphous as it sounds, is to somehow separate the enemy from the population. And yeah, you speak to that numbness. Here we are 9 years into Afghanistan, nearing 7 years in Iraq. But the wars are still going on. Like, Americans are still fighting them, are still over there. So I think that's why these books are important, is that it puts a personal story, a personal face to it, whereas for many Americans, the American soldier is a caricature rather than actual people.
Yeah, I always felt that way about reading Vietnam War books and seeing Vietnam War movies growing up. And then looking at the dates some of them were made and being like, wow, that must have been really powerful to see that because the war wasn't even over and it just ended, or or that book is like right from the time, and that's what I felt like when I was reading this book. I was like, oh, this is what it would have been like. I mean, you are getting a real view and it's still going on, and it's definitely important for people to, I don't know. That's
that was certainly my aim.
Yeah.
I'm obviously a little too biased to state definitively if it. But the crazy thing about these wars, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, is year to year the wars are so different. My Iraq, they're at the kind of the tail end of the surge, focusing on the kind of counterinsurgency and the Sons of Iraq paramilitants. Probably very, very different than what they're seeing in Iraq currently in 2010. Go back the other way, 2006 Iraq, where we were still kind of approaching the war from more of a traditional mindset and shooting first, asking questions later. Very different than what I found in 2008. So it'll be interesting as the historians kind of put these wars together and put them into context, breaking them down almost into sub-wars.
Now, see, that's really interesting you'd say that, because for me, being here, it's just like the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war. I don't see the different segments of the war or that it's changing.
Right, yeah. No, and I think what you speak of is kind of this unforeseen byproduct of the all-volunteer force. There are many good reasons for getting rid of the draft after Vietnam. And this professional force or all-volunteer force, they were designed for short conflicts like Desert Storm, where we can go in, overwhelm them with power and strength and intensity, and it's over in 6 months. But what we're finding here is, as these wars drag on into our ninth year, it's the same people going over and over again. Something like less than 1% of Americans serve in the armed forces. So we have one of my good friends, Chris Mason, who Staff Sergeant Boondock in the book. He's 28 years old. He just went over for his 4th deployment. He's spending, this is upwards of 45, 46 months in combat. And he's still a young man. And he's not that extreme of an example. I mean, there are soldiers out there just like him doing this. And you wonder, their normality is totally different. So in the future, people much smarter than me have forecasted that these kind of protracted guerrilla wars are the way of the future. That we're going to be dealing more with these in the next 50, 60 years if we get immersed in them. And the enemy is not going to fight us on the way we want them to fight. Desert Storm in that way was an anomaly, tank-on-tank battle. So I do hope that one lesson that the American public takes out of this war is, the military is going to go wherever the politicians decide to send them. I do hope that the American people take heed of that and recognize that it's up to them to hold the politicians accountable. They're ultimately in charge. They control our fate. Books like this, I hope, put that kind of personal stamp on that, so voters in the future keep that in mind.
So you were writing the blog. How did you get the? Did you know that you'd have a book out? Was it?
Yeah, it was a crazy process. So the blog got shut down. I get yelled at a whole bunch for it, but because I hadn't violated any operational security, they couldn't really get me in any trouble whatsoever. I even got promoted to captain a month after all this went down by the guy I made fun of. Now, granted, he threatened to punch me through a wall as he pinned on my captain bars, but he put them on nonetheless. So all that was happening. I thought things were finally calming down. And then about a month after the blog got shut down, the Washington Post did a story on it, kind of the rise and fall that was very positive towards me, and said that it was a good counterinsurgence tool. It was putting a personal touch on the war. Said that there were congressional inquiries in the matter, and that certain high-ranking officers in the Pentagon were really upset that this had kind of caught them off guard. So once that Washington Post article came out, while in Iraq, I got emails from literary agents and publishing houses saying, "Do you want to do a book?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great, but I have 9 more months in Iraq. That's obviously I'm trying to survive a war here and trying to accomplish a mission as honorably as possible and trying to get my soldiers home. Can this wait until I get back?" And some of them said, "Yeah, sure, hit us up when you write it," and some said no because they wanted to kind of capitalize right
That's
away.
terrible. I mean, those 3 items you gave were like serious priorities.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. But people have their own lives to lead, I guess. But it worked out with DiCapo. DiCapo stayed very interested, and it worked out with them. So I'm very thankful to them for that.
What about movies? Movie rights.
Still, there's people have sniffed around a little bit. Nothing immediately on the plate.
Who do you want to play you?
Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah,
Samuel L.
that's
Jackson.
what I was going to say.
Yeah, or maybe the guy from maybe McLovin from Superbad. He might make more sense.
How about the guy from Avatar?
The blue guy?
No,
that'd be great.
The Sarge.
I don't know. He might have to lose a little weight. I think I'm a little smaller than that guy.
But a movie on the war, using KABOOM, might be a good idea as opposed to what we're used to. Pearl Harbor. We used to World War II movies.
Glorified war movies. Yeah.
Right.
A First Amendment movie in the in the context of a battle is not a bad idea.
I think it'd be interesting. Once these wars end, I think we'll see more and more films come out. Like Vietnam. Most of the Vietnam War films that mattered came out in the decade following the end of the war. So it might be a little early for Hollywood to tackle that, but the Hurt Locker got rave reviews. So there's starting to be a little bit of output from their end.
But isn't the Hurt Locker and a lot of those Vietnam movies still your traditional war movie?
I see what you're saying. A little bit. I think Hurt Locker was very similar to many Vietnam War films, but was dissimilar to I think what the American public expected, because it was very apolitical. And these wars are on the home front very political, even to this day.
That's interesting. That was the first thing I remember thinking about that movie. Is like it didn't deal with any religious or political elements. It was just like focused on this one, which I think is a smart way to go about it. And they couldn't sell war movie, and then that came out, and then there were these. I mean, I'm sure I haven't seen that Matt Damon, The Green Zone.
Don't bother.
I bet it's pretty action packed.
It's Jason Bourne does Iraq.
Yeah. Much. Okay. So yeah, and then that movie had been shelved, and then once Hurt Locker did well, they're like, oh, we'll put that one out.
Right.
You know? But I mean, so have you seen any others that are? Do you feel like obviously it's always going to be dramatized in some way?
Yeah, I mean, even the Hurt Locker, I felt was too exaggerated. But look, and it took me a while to get through it, to watch it. But looking back on it, you're so married to your experiences and your time. I mean, it's the seminal moment in your life. I mean, 15 months. There's no way they're ever going to get it right.
Right.
So I've come around and really kind of embraced that movie and the message that it got to a broader American public, in that this is the soldier, this is what they do.
Right.
So I am thankful for that. But on a personal level, I was sitting there, small technical flaws that the average viewer's not going to notice, doesn't care about it. It really does not matter in the grand scheme of things. It was just driving me crazy.
Yeah.
So in a way, you've got kind of a fixed document where you're telling us that both wars are just changing. They're evolving. Mm-hmm. Both wars are evolving, and then you get Hollywood doing another spin, which is like a whole other dimension. You kind of need a fixed medium where you can just kind of look at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not censored, and it's not written necessarily to. It's not written to entertain, obviously.
Right.
It's to inform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was important for me. It's one of the reasons I wanted to write it right after we got back. I still had a little distance and maybe a little better grip on sanity. But, like, for example, if I was to sit down and write the memoir now or 20 years from now, it would be a totally different book. Mm-hmm. Over time, time really kind of dilutes the mind, and a lot of the both positively and negatively. So I wanted it to be as fresh and as raw as possible, because the authenticity, I think, of a war memoir is what makes it powerful, or at least potentially. Mm.
Now, on the website, KABOOMbook.com,
yes,
is there a blog on there?
It is. I have a blog now that I update, and it's kind of a veteran's take on readjusting back to society. I live in New York City now, which is about as far away from military culture as you can possibly get. So it has a feed that links immediately to KABOOM Book. So if people like the book and want to read more words that I put down, they are there. They are out there on the magical interwebs.
What was that like, though? I mean, obviously we could talk for probably many hours just about that, but transitioning back that's a huge part of it, I would assume.
And I'll admit I had a much harder time readjusting than I thought I was going to. Mm-hmm. And I came back with every support system possible. Mm-hmm. I had a loving family, a loving girlfriend, financially secure. I was transitioning out. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys, they come back, they don't have a stable family environment. They come back to financial ruins because the wife left, and all his combat pay that he earned the past 15 months has been spent. Crying babies, they have to re-enlist for financial reasons, or just a lot of times they get addicted to combat and kind of the thrill of living day to day. So as difficult a time as I had, I was always keenly aware that of how blessed I was at the same time.
That's interesting. Addicted to warfare. I can't even conceive of that.
It's not really the warfare. It is the thrill. It is the sense of purpose. It's the camaraderie. It is the simplicity of life over there. It's kill or be killed. There's no bills. There's no neighbors. There's no family drama. It's go out there. It's almost goes back to our caveman days, probably the hunt, in some bizarre way. I'm not trying to be flippant about what the horrors and evils of war are, but as a person caught up in the action, it is very real. And day-to-day life back here in comparison is mundane.
I hope I'm not straying too far off topic. What was the food like as a soldier?
It was it's a good question, and actually we were taken care of, kind of in sharp contrast to, I think, the stereotypes of military life. We lived out in this combat outpost in the middle of an Iraqi village. There was about 50 of us. But we also had a mobile kitchen team. They call it, like, essentially our military chefs that lived out there with us, and they were really good at what they did. I think my favorite meal was spaghetti and meatballs, and they put that out once or twice a week. So they put out a breakfast and a dinner generally every day, and then lunch you was kind of on your own with those meals ready to eat, which are much kind of like astronaut food for soldiers.
Are they self-heating? Is it like that?
It is, yeah. It comes in with one of the, like, a built-in micro heating pouch where you pour water in and it heats, and soldiers being soldiers, of course, throw them at each other, and it turns into almost like mini firecrackers. But
okay,
good times. You never know where conversation will take you, do you?
The old Iraqi food fight.
I did the first Bon Jovi concert in Boston.
Did you?
I was.
That's not off topic at all.
Well, no.
What they serve you there for food?
I'm going to bring up page 129, actually, the Bon Jovi IED.
Yes.
But I just got a phone call, and they said, Bon Jovi's coming to the Paradise. Can you help put the opening acts on the bill? And he was virtually unknown. He had one song on the radio, Runaway. Mm-hmm. And we helped save the show. And it's just 1983, but you've got Bon Jovi in here.
I do.
I just had to bring up my experience.
Okay.
Would you mind reading them?
No, I'd be happy to.
Cool.
Kind of the context of this is we were on a counter IED mission, kind of going up and down the highway, essentially trying to intercept guys putting in roadside bombs. And yeah. As part of our recurring duties as night watchmen at Sheikh Noor's compound, we patrolled Route Tampa, the highway stretch that served as the logistical spinal column for the massive American body draped across Iraq. During this mission set, I always put out the same radio call every 4 hours to the gunners pulling security. White 1, this is White, this is White 1. Wake up your vehicle and get Redcon 1. It's time to go on Route Tampa. On Memorial Day weekend, Specialist Cold Cuts sat perched in the gunner's cupola of my vehicle. After my radio call, I realized I hadn't heard him speak over the internal net recently. Given his proclivity for talking, I found this odd. Hey, Cold Cuts, you ready, dude? Silence followed. Yo, Cold Cuts. I think he's asleep, sir, PFC, Private First Class Smitty said, matter-of-factly from the driver's hole. I leaned across my seat and tugged at Specialist Cold Cuts' leg and yelled into my headset. Hey, Cold Cuts, you ready? What? Huh? The unmistakable smacking of lips confirmed Private First Class Smitty's assessment. Dude, wake up and get ready. We need to patrol Tampa again. I'm going to skip some. This is a lot of banter to get to the Bon Jovi part.
Then Bon Jovi shows up and helps you guys disarm the bomb.
I'm just going to say, we've done about 30 minutes now. Are we doing 55?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right. So, long story short, we get a radio call about a potential IED. We get out of the vehicle to kind of check it out. As we drove up the near side of Checkpoint 55, our senior scout spotted the convoy. Those blankety blank. They're on the other side of the checkpoint, Staff Sergeant Bulldog reported. They keep beaming us and blank with their lights, but none of them are on the ground. How the blank can they even see anything from where they're at? They're too far away. That's why we're here, I said. We'll check it out for them. As Private Smitty dropped the striker's back ramp, Sergeant Axel asked if we should wake up Shug Knight, our interpreter. Our Terp was asleep in his seat, sprawled out. He hated the long missions at Sheikh Noor's, but refused to allow any of the younger Terps go out with them, insisting that we were his platoon and our missions were his missions. It's cool, I said. We won't need him for this. Let the old man sleep. I met our dismount team on the ground. We strode south in a wedge formation on the other side of the road from the convoy. One of the convoy soldiers laser beamed the area of concern. Sergeant First Class Big Country, the platoon sergeant, took out his flashlight, turned it on, and surveyed the spot. Broken banana crates, he said calmly, picking up a large piece and tossing it off the road. They stopped all the traffic on this highway for broken banana crates. Some of the platoon members laughed, others cursed. I stayed silent. I felt numb to these type of moments by now. They happened often enough. Well, Sergeant First Class Big Country took a fire team to inform the convoy that all was clear. Staff Sergeant Boondock picked up the remaining pieces of the crate and started pelting Specialist Tunnel, using every colorful epithet for Pogue imaginable. Pogues were the guys that didn't leave the big bases, Fobbits as well. We still hadn't found the reported wires, though, and I knew that we would inevitably be asked whether anything had blown up or not. I retraced our steps to the north, and through the darkness, spotted a long, dangling cord connected to a small, squarish piece of plastic. Instinctively, I reached for my radio, but before I keyed the hand mic, I caught an odd glint in the moonlight. I walked up to the long cord and kneeled down. Instead of finding wire, I stared at 5 inches of spool. I yanked on the spool, and a cassette tape flew into my hands. I flipped the tape over to find that it was Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet, a classic relic from the 1980s. After asking the soldiers if any of them wanted a vintage tape of 1980s glam rock, I tossed it to the side of the road. I told everyone to mount back up and found my platoon sergeant returning from the far side of the checkpoint. They have anything to say, I asked? Sergeant First Class Big Country laughed. Yeah, they said thanks. As we walked back north in our wedge, Private Hot Wheels busted out the chorus to Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive, and the rest of the platoon either joined in or started booing.
Wow.
So how often does that happen, that you go to investigate for an IED and it's just like a piece of garbage on the side of the road? I mean,
95% of the time, and then the one time you get too complacent, it turns out to be the real thing, and
right.
you realize that you're getting maybe a little too blasé about some very serious things. But yeah, almost always it was nothing.
Thank you very much for saying blankety blank, blank, blank.
This is a family program, I understand.
Yeah, we do appreciate that, and I thought it was kind of cute. Bon Jovi IED. So when the movie's made,
yeah.
which song do you use?
Yeah, do you use the song they sung? Do you use the song? See, I bet what Hollywood would do would take Dead or Alive, because yeah, it works, and then just turn the tape into that.
I could see that. It's Iraq, it's the desert, has the kind of the cowboy element to it.
Yep. Yeah, that'll be good.
But the question in my mind is, was it an Iraqi's tape or was it a military tape?
I'm going to go with Iraqis because cassette tapes really are a bit outdated.
We could just end this war by giving them Janis Joplin or Jimi Hendrix or something coherent and magical and musical. But
you mean on CD? Or maybe even we could give them iPods, and then it'd be better for
just
the
hand them out
climate.
to people and then stop, blowing things up and just listen to good music.
It was kind of funny, but I mean, it was also kind of not funny. You'd see Iraqi kids running around, and obviously hand-me-downs from various organizations. Like, you'd see a 7-year-old bully wearing a world's greatest grandma or something.
Yeah.
But one T-shirt that really stuck out in my mind was a torn Def Leppard shirt from the early '80s, and it looked. I mean, it had holes in it. It looked like a rocker, going for that vintage wear. But it was genuine. It was a little kid running around.
Yeah, and all joking aside, we're touched that we thank you for your service, absolutely, and your friend's service, and it's just incomprehensible that there are kids out there in Iraq that are starving, and soldiers out there that are suffering, and
I think that the kids is really what I was unprepared for personally. I'd never really been exposed to that type of poverty, and you're keenly aware when you're over there. A lot of times you use kids as sources. They talk to them and they don't really know too much better. You're like, hey, do you know who this? Show them a picture of a guy, and he's like, oh yeah, he lives over there, and you're like, thanks. But in the back of your head, you're like, am I putting this kid in danger? And on top of that, you give them candy, or you give them coloring books that parents may have sent. You're keenly aware of how limited of an impact you can have on their lives, and that this war for you was temporary. You would go back home to America and have all the just be financially secure and have that. And this was their normality. This was what they didn't know anything else. it lingers. The kids linger with you.
You really wish that you could have everyone understand this and go on humanitarian missions, which I think, I mean, being altruistic, I just think that it could stop the wars by, just taking care of people. But I mean, that might be too lofty a thought.
If somebody had figured out how to end wars, I think humanity would have gone through with it.
How do you see this ending, or not necessarily that it'll be solved,
right.
but that.
I will answer your question. I have to preface it, of course. This is my answer as a citizen of the Republic, just kind of my opinion. Iraq, we're winding down in Iraq, and the civil war is still very possible there between the Sunnis and the Shias, and then you throw in the Kurds up north. It's still very possible. However, they have a chance at stability now that had we left in 2006, 2007, they didn't have. A civil war was inevitable then.
Right.
I do think one of the lessons we need to learn here is what we did in 2003 was ridiculous. You can't just roll in with no plan. But I was lucky by the time we got there, we had a plan to at least attempt to fix it. There was that you broke it, you buy it kind of thing. So Iraq, I'm cautiously optimistic that they might stabilize in some way. I mean, they won't be the burgeoning Western-style democracy that certain elements of the previous administration envisioned back in 2003. But maybe they can hold together as a country. Afghanistan, having not been there, I'm a little less hesitant to offer an opinion. But my friends that have been in both countries say that for all the reasons that Iraq was fractured, Afghanistan is multiplied by 10. At least Iraq had a history of stability and some kind of secular core. Afghanistan has never had that. So I kind of envision us pulling out, declaring victory, and Afghanistan will return to how it's always been in that regard.
Or at least for the past 30, 50 years, maybe.
Well, yeah, whether or not the Taliban returns,
Yeah.
I don't know. But in terms of the rule disconnect from province to province, I think that's a given.
Yeah.
In Ramadan, you talk about watching a man die. Had you ever seen a man die before you went to war?
No,
So that was your first experience.
No, it was, and it's different, and it wasn't. It just kind of happened, and you just kind of like you. It's such a check because you really come to terms with not only your own mortality, but just how fragile life is. Most 24-year-olds, you kind of have this sense of cocky invincibility about you, and that goes away real quick.
Yes. It was an Iraqi soldier. Was he on our side?
He was, and he'd been shot through the stomach and up through the back, potentially by his own men, potentially by a drive-by insurgent. It was never really clear, but they brought him back to our combat outposts where our medics were, and the medics were trying to save him, and I happened to be the officer on duty at the time, and they needed another hand, so I put on gloves and literally, not to get too graphic, but was trying to keep his intestines in. And you could literally see his eyes kind of glimmer in and out. And you're watching life fade out. It was, it was one of those moments.
Life-changing for you.
Yeah. I don't want to be too melodramatic about it, but yeah, that stays, something like that stays with you.
But you did the right thing. You tried to help a fellow human being that was fading from this.
How different was what you thought it would be like? Because I know we've talked about, obviously there's the books and that glorify it, or movies that obviously are nothing what it's like,
Right.
But how was it shocking how different it was? Was that a big part? Because I know you said coming back was shocking how different it was to come back.
I think what I was kind of unprepared for, but this has been the case in pretty much every war, is 90% of the time it's really boring. You're just trying to pass the time. Back in the day, it's because they were moving from, marching, across states, etc. Here, it was just because there wasn't much going on. Like, you're conducting electricity polls in the village, seeing how much electricity they get per day. You're drinking chai with sheikhs, just kind of like keenly where they're trying to. Some of them are trying to scheme on you as you talk to them. And then again, it's almost uncanny how a firefight breaks out, or an ID pops up, or an Iraqi soldier is brought back to your outpost. As soon as you start to get complacent and you start to think, "Hey, I get this war thing figured out." No, you don't. You don't. You're just always trying to make it to the next day.
Yeah.
So, an Iraqi fellow soldier might have shot him. Might it have been friendly fire or just an argument?
The most popular theory that was peddled through the Iraqi army soldiers and reached the ears of the Americans as well was that he'd been very domineering with these two soldiers that were at the post, and that they were cleaning their weapons, and that they used that cover to shoot him when he turned around. But they swore up and down as the only witnesses that no, it's because there had been an insurgent that drove by their checkpoint. So, yeah, maybe the official investigation did reveal a final truth, but by the time I left Iraq, it hadn't come out yet.
Now, did you have to learn another language while there, or did you pick up?
You pick it up. Each platoon has an interpreter whose English is here or there. Mine was Suge Knight. He was this just really large, massive man, originally from North Africa, who had learned English from British missionaries.
So that was his real name?
No, you all give him nicknames.
Okay.
You all give him nicknames. That he's nicknamed after a hip hop entrepreneur.
Right.
Who he resembles.
Yeah, I'm just thinking,
I know you're tied into the rap scene.
No, I know of the man, of course, but I was thinking. Okay.
So, did you maintain those nicknames for the book for anonymity? Yeah, or did you, or did everybody, no matter what, have like a code name or a nickname?
Every interpreter definitely had a code name, just for simple recognition. But also, I kept them so they could remain anonymous.
Right.
Because they're still over there doing a very dangerous job. And over the course of those 15 months, you pick up Arabic phrases, street Iraqi, essentially. But it'd be like going to Compton and learning English and trying to learn English right away. It's going to be very different than the formal training. More accurate, more genuine, probably, but I wouldn't be comfortable conversing in Arabic in a classroom because it's just very different.
But it's not all Arabic. There's different. I told you, as I get older, it's like the words that are on the tip of my tongue really start fading quick. Dialects. There are different dialects and different, actually, languages, right?
Exactly.
Because there are different tribes have different languages. Or not tribes, but...
Well, Iraqi had a very different dialect than, say, Jordan or Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And certainly there were different accents in different parts of Iraq, We stayed in northwest Baghdad most of the time, so it was pretty much the same. But my interpreter, his Arabic was African Arabic, so locals immediatly keyed on the difference. I mean, there were certain different words, and he'd always be asking the Iraqi interpreters why they were laughing at him. It's because he was speaking their language slightly differently, and they found it funny.
It's a similar. I mean, that's true in this country.
Oh,
too.
absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
Dialects.
Absolutely.
Well, you get the Southern drawl, and you get the Harvard Yard, cars in the Harvard Yard. But that's not as pronounced, I think. There's a different language. You're American, and you're English, and you're trying to understand another language, and you get the dialect thing. So you've got, but you manage through it.
You just, like anything else, you just kind of embrace the suck of it all and make the best of it. Shug was a great interpreter, very loyal, but he always got the 5 W's mixed, the who, what, when, where, and why mixed up. So
Those seem pretty important.
They're very important. But you just got to be patient and stick with it. You'd be like, Shug, ask him where the rockets are. Well, he converses in Arabic. They have been here for 4 days. No, Shug. You just try again, and he gets there. He gets there.
Interesting.
They have a common phrase over there in Arabic, inshallah, which means God willing. They applied it to pretty much everything. Like, oh, I'll see you tomorrow. Inshallah.
Yeah.
So it's very different than I think kind of the American mentality of go, go, go. They've that region has seen war for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's like you take everything with a grain of salt.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, we'll see if it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Whereas here, you kind of always assume.
Kind of almost similar to the Spanish concept of manana. So.
Had you done any formal writing before you started your blog?
I'd grown up enjoying it, and I was a history major and English minor in college, but I'd never really published anything before. But it's something I'd served as high school editor of my paper and sports editor of my college paper, but nothing like this. Initially, the blog was just for family and friends. It was just kind of a forum for people, if they're interested, they could check out, see what we were doing, and if they weren't, they didn't have to.
That's interesting, the amount of communication. That's definitely a huge difference in this war, the amount of...
Oh, then Vietnam, sure.
Yeah, that's going to make it interesting when, in 10 years or so, just the amount of video and writing and, I don't know. I mean, you could make probably a much more accurate portrayal. Too, by
it's all out there. I mean, they call it war porn. All the YouTube videos of firefights, and there's kind of almost a voyeuristic feel to it. It's also very good in many ways. Instant communication with family and friend. You get back from a mission, a soldier could pick up the phone, call his mom, call the wife. On the dark side of this, though, is the problems at home.
Then
piled on top of the piles of war. There wasn't that wall anymore. I had a soldier get divorced by MySpace, being told that his wife was leaving him on MySpace.
That's awful.
It was terrible. It's terrible, but it's part of the 21st century world we live in. I mean, everything is instant, everything is digital, and it's all right there. But there's really no way to. I mean, it's just the world we live in. I don't know what the answer is.
I mean, there isn't. I mean, it's just another difference in this war than in other wars where you would get a letter. I would also probably find it really aggravating if you didn't hear, because I had a friend who was in the Marines in Afghanistan, and he was gone. He was online like all the time, and then he was gone for like 5 months, and where he was just not able to get online.
Right.
And everybody was like, what is going on?
Right.
Because and then he just pops back up online one day, and we're just like, what the heck?
Right.
He was like, yeah, I've just been out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we're doing our thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's an odd thing, and kind of going back to like the divorce papers. Yeah, it is awful that he got it by MySpace, but it would have been equally awful back in Vietnam getting a letter 6
Dear
months
John
after the
letter.
fact. Yeah, I mean,
sure.
this is just a Dear John message now. So the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yep. So once the book came out, did you start writing anything else? Have you worked on other writings?
I am. I'm writing some fiction. I'm trying my hand at the Great American Novel.
All right.
So we'll see how that goes. It's challenging. I'm enjoying it, but it's very different than writing KABOOM because this is what happened. Sometimes there wasn't deeper meaning. Sometimes that was what made it interesting. Was stuff just happened. Where fiction, there's layers. But I'm enjoying it. And I'm going back to grad school next year for Middle Eastern Studies. So I'm hoping to get back in academia and not strangle anybody. So we'll see how that goes.
Reno, Nevada. Now, how much of your life was in Reno?
Born and raised. Left there at 18 for college. My mom still lives there. My dad lives in Las Vegas. So suburban West Coast was pretty much all I knew until I got into the Army and went to Iraq.
Where'd you go to college?
Wake Forest, which is in North Carolina.
Oh,
so I had a little bit of introduction to the Old South, as it were. But college campus is kind of, there's always that bubble feel. there was that.
Its own little planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially that campus is
it's
very beautiful.
It's very nice, very nice.
Which brings me to the next question: why New York City?
Well, my then girlfriend, now fiance, when I was getting out of the Army, I was going to move to Europe and pretend I was Hemingway, essentially, and drink watching bullfights or something. I really don't know where my head was at. And we'd been dating for about 4 years, and she's like, Matt, I love you, but she's a school teacher in New York, and she's like, I love you, but I'm not doing long distance anymore. I did it through the Army because we had to.
Yeah.
Maybe you could move to New York. And I thought about it, and I cared a lot about her, obviously, and it's not like she was asking. New York City is still a pretty cool place for a writer to be, so I went ahead with it, and here I am 1 year later, having survived the concrete jungles, still living there.
So your relationship was all during the war?
During the Army. I mean, there was 2.5 years of kind of training and build-up that my unit did out in Hawaii.
Oh.
Not a bad place to be stationed.
Yeah, no, when I saw that in the book, I was like,
No,
not too bad.
the Army treated me pretty well. There are far worse Army bases than Hawaii. But yeah, so we had done long distance the whole time.
Wow, and I'm just trying to get a grip on your geographical,
Yeah,
Nevada, North Carolina, Hawaii, Iraq, New York. You're
Yes.
just kind of like bouncing.
Yeah, touring, doing all that
You
bit.
could do a travel log.
I'm hoping to settle into one place for at least a couple of years. We'll see.
Well, that'd be nice, but I just think it's important again that you're documenting all this stuff, because for future generations, like Joe was saying, you got the YouTubes now, and you got the MySpaces, and you get all this, but there's nothing like this fixed medium.
Yeah.
I think for like a snapshot.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I wanted it to just be a genuine testament of what me and my guy saw, and I hope that's what I accomplished.
Have you read Andrew Exum's book?
I have. It's very good, and what I'd recommend from the early days of the Afghanistan war.
This Man's Army.
This Man's Army, yes.
And you said he's a guru now?
Works at the Center for New American Security, which is a big think tank down in D.C. That kind of focuses on counterinsurgency and guerrilla warfare and the like. And he's very well respected in those circles.
Yeah, it must be important to have people like you who were on the lower level on the ground there, and then coming back and coming up with strategy more than, I mean, I'm not sure how much that happens, but
I
as
think
opposed
a bit.
to being like the top level,
Right.
still just like thinking it's a game. Or something.
No, and I think that's one of the reasons Andrew has found success down there. Is he's able to bring a real voice to theory, and they hope that theory turns into application, and he can provide a perspective from somebody that was there.
You have to sell millions of books, you understand, because one of the sheer joys
I'll do what I can.
of being a lowly Access host, we sit at home, it's like, oh, there's Chris Prentice, and there's Andrew Exum, and there's Ray Manzarek, and there's Kurt Schilling, and we just see our guests, and we feel important. So if Matt Gallagher's famous, then I can say, and there's Matt Gallagher, and it's important to me.
I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
I will do it for you then.
Thank you, please do, because that'll just help all of us.
Okay.
It'll help WinCamp.
It helps them when I don't walk in with a mood.
Oh, absolutely. I can see that.
So we have a few minutes left.
Did you have fun on our show?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You guys keep
Different.
When you write
keep
the
it
great
loose, which is
American
good.
novel, you got to come back.
I'll do what I can. I will probably be 70 years from now. I hope, by the time I finally finish it, but I'll come up then for sure.
No, we actually like the people at Da Capo, so you can stay with Da Capo, and
Yeah.
No, they've been very good to me.
it's a great company.
Absolutely.
And for our viewers, Da Capo's right here. They're in New York, but they're here too, and that's good. I think it's good for Boston to have an important publisher and imprint here.
I agree. I agree.
And we've had many of their authors on. Mark Grabowski wrote a book on Phil Spector
Okay.
and the Supremes,
Oh, okay.
and being music people too. It's nice. Boy, are we like at the 1 or 2 minute level?
Yeah, we're wrapping up. So
Isn't
I
that
mean,
nice? We're so loose.
Here we are.
so more information, KABOOMbook.com.
KABOOMbook.com.
We'll put
It'll
that
have
up on the bottom.
links to Facebook and Twitter and my blog at the bottom, and link to places people can check out, read an excerpt, etc.
And it's hardcover now. When's it going to be in softback?
They're planning a paperback in next spring,
Okay.
and they also be KABOOM will be published in the UK next spring as well. So looking forward to both of those.
Would it? I mean, I'm being very respectful. Would it be coming out in Iraq? Do they usually publish books about wars?
I don't know about Iraqi publishers, but I've gotten emails from many soldiers who have gotten the book from loved ones and read it in Iraq, and they were very, very positive and seemed to think that I captured some part of the craziness of a soldier experience in modern war.
Good answer. Well, thank you very much for being on our show today.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you'll have to come back. That's what we always say.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever come back.
Tommy James was on for the third time, but of course that was
Tommy
with me.
James and the Shondell.
Okay. Well, I'll follow Tommy's lead on that then.
If you have a pen.
I do.
Good. And this is Visual Radio, like number 456. I've lost track.
I don't know.
It's up there.
It's in the thousands, I think.
It is. And that's Joe LaRocca. I'm
That's
Joe
Joe
Viglione.
Viglione. That's Matt Gallagher. And we hope you continue to watch us, and we hope everybody reads this book if you'd like to.
And KABOOM is, be thankful that you're not experiencing KABOOM firsthand.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.